Hi, everyone. This is Rohit from Rise and Mastery, and I'm excited to have Eric Jorgensen, who's a repeat guest and is the CEO of Scribe Media. He was on the founding team of Charlie, and is also the author of the book Almanack of Naval Ravikant and the new book Anthology of Balaji. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks for having me back.
Awesome. Since you spoke last time, a lot of things have changed. You moved on from your full time job. You started your own fund, podcast, and congrats on becoming the CEO of Scribe Media. How did that happen?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a weird 3 years since we sort of had that last startup exit, and I just went into it kind of working on my own projects for a while. Honestly, I credit a lot of it to the first book, The Almanack of Naval, right? I think like that a direct outcome of that was the podcast, was starting the venture fund, and it's certainly what led to me becoming CEO of Scribe. I had an amazing experience. Tucker Max was kind of the lead there then, and he helped me get that first book published. They did an amazing job, helped me get it out into the world, and I had an amazing experience. So I immediately started writing a second book and talking to friends about Scribe. And then I heard rumors sort of recently that they were running into financial trouble. And that it turned out that the previous CEO had really mismanaged the company. And I brought the idea to some friends who have a private holding company. They ended up doing some diligence, loved what they saw, bought the company. And very much to my surprise, I was just trying to keep the company alive because I love using them as an author. And then they gave me a call and said, "Hey, we think you should come be CEO of this company?" And I was like, "Oh, let me talk to my wife." So did some soul searching, thought hard about it. And I think books are sacred. I love working on them. I love helping authors. And I think Scribe is a really good example and an early leader in where publishing is going. And I'm really proud to kind of be a part of that and help authors create great works that they own, that they control, and get the full financial upside, and just be able to build the book that they want and use it how they want. I think there's great things that come from that, as my story shows.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's super interesting. What you've been able to achieve. Just wondering, when it comes to the book Almanac of Naval Ravikant, how many books were you able to sell?
I did the math recently. I think it's over 1 million across all of the different translations, all the territories, and all the formats. It's honestly a little tough to know exactly, but I think it's there. And then the free digital versions have reached certainly millions more. It's every corner of the globe. I'm so blown away by the response to that book and all the people that has reached, and the messages I've gotten is like blown my mind. I thought I was just doing like a small project for a group of nerds that, also love Naval. I had no idea it was going to turn into what it turned into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when I was discussing about the book, you interestingly talked about different leverages, and it's still on my mind, like the capital leverage, the knowledge leverage, the media leverage, and the label leverage. So I think you've been able to capitalize on that. You build a rolling fund and a media podcast. Are you going to look at keep building on the rolling fund and the investment fund at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly thinking about capital leverage is what drew me a little more towards investing from the Almanac of Naval. And I almost immediately started working on the Anthology of Balaji, and the ideas in that pushed me within my investing even more sort of towards the frontier and the deep tech. The very first chapter of the book is the point of building a startup is to build something that money can't buy right now. Money can't buy you a ticket to Mars. It can't buy you, a cure to cancer. And the point of building a startup, and the startups that are worth investing into me, are the ones who are adding a net new capability to humanity and really pushing those frontiers. It's not, hey, we think we've got like a slightly better software for, dog salon management. That may have a financial return, but it's not the stuff that excites me. And it's not the things that move humanity forward in quite as much as, a drone construction company or nuclear fission micro reactors or some of the other things we've been able to invest in recently.
Right, right. So super interesting. And when it comes to Balaji, I think almost everyone in the startup world knows about him. He was formerly the CTO of Coinbase and partner Andreessen Horowitz. But why a
Yeah.
book on him? It could be a book on anyone, but why on him specifically?
Yeah, Balaji is, I mean, he stands out as unique even in an industry full of unique people, right? He is consistently uncomfortably far ahead, I think, of kind of the modern discourse. And the way he introduces himself in the introduction is like he's the id of technology. And I think Mark Andreessen put it well, I think, in an interview with him. He's talking about Balaji. He says when Balaji is wrong, it's because he over extrapolates, not under extrapolates, right? He takes an idea to 11 when maybe in reality it stops at a 5 or a 6 or something like that. And I think for all the people that there are out there to learn from, and there are many people to admire and to respect and to learn from, Balaji to me just represents someone who's so far out in the future that he's the extremeness there I find really useful. Like it's much easier for me, who might naturally only be able to think to a 3, to learn to think to a 5 or a 6 when I see him think to an 11. I'm like, oh, that's how you go, like, and therefore, and therefore, and therefore, and see the ripple effects of some of these new technologies and how far out they go. You just learn to, it's a new lens on the world. You learn to, I don't know, pick up some new mental models. And I think it helps me as an investor. I think it helps me as a CEO. I think I see the world certainly a little more optimistically than I used to. If you're only familiar with Balaji from Twitter, you might not take him for an optimist. He's usually talking about something that's going wrong, or an institution that's failing, or something that's a problem in the news, or how we're mismanaging the pandemic. But I think a lot of that, the foundation of all of that in his worldview, which I tried to capture here, is optimism about the kind of future that we can have and the kind of impact technology can have, and just impatience with all the ways we're getting in our own way, whether that's regulatory or cultural or, policy, education, just cowardice of just not going for it as heavily as we could. So I hope that people who pick this up feel a sense of optimism, feel a sense of hope, feel a little better about the way things are going and the way that they can affect a positive change.
Got it. And I read a quote from Scott Adams, who's the creator of Dilbert comic, who said like most of the people are really good in one thing, but if you were really good in 2 or 3 things, you could set yourself apart. But what I see now, Balaji is really good in a lot of things, like angel investing. He's a great in CEO politics. He's a great author. Well, do you think it means that you should try a lot of different things? And try to learn in different ways, because he talks about learn to think in multiple ways. So do you think you should try a lot of different things, like you have also done, like with your media podcast, with your investing fund?
I think so. I'm the way I've phrased that to people is often, a sufficiently advanced generalist becomes a specialist. Like when you overlap enough different skills, you become something really, really unique instead of just a very sharp spear of a specialist in one direction. Balaji, I think, is a good example of he stands out in terms of being mathematically literate and very sort of and a good writer and persuasive and ability to extrapolate all these scientific ideas and parse them. He has got a really strong sort of scientific and mathematical foundation. And that's the foundation of his worldview. And you'll see him mix metaphors a lot in that book. You'll see him apply sort of mathematical terminology to something that feels, I don't know, it feels uncomfortable at first. Like you don't necessarily know what that word means in that context. And if you look it up, or if you just try to like grok it a little more, you'll see that it's a really good metaphor. And I think, he talks at the end of the book, yes, learn to think in multiple ways, take mathematical concepts and take the way they're written and try to see them visually. If they're already visual, try to turn them into a like in a math equation. Try to write it as computer code and understand these concepts in as many ways as you can. And you'll sort of see different things in each of them. And I think it's a strong argument for fluency across a bunch of different disciplines. It's certainly given me an appreciation for the math education that I have, though, as we learn everything in education, it's also siloed. And it would have been so great to get more synthesis and more applications of math to across different topics and build a little more of that. I think people who study biology or walk some of the paths or read the books that he recommended in here will start to build more of that. And that's a real superpower, no matter what direction you're heading in.
Right. Right. And something very interesting he pointed out is like money is a tool, but he doesn't really optimize for it. But would this advice be valid for everyone? Because we're trained to think like we need to make an X amount of money and then stay in a stable job. But he thinks very differently. So what is he optimizing for?
I would think he is optimizing, certainly at this point of his career, for impact. He's optimizing for long-term outcomes that are for the better of humanity. I think there is something to that. It's a little counterintuitive, but the more you focus on money, especially achieving some certain minimum threshold, actually the harder it becomes to achieve. And the people who get real outlier results are those who are doing something not for the money, right? And you see this in startup founders you back, right? If somebody comes in saying, I think we can exit this company for $20 million. Like, I just need $1 million investment to get there. They've got dollar signs in their eyes and they're looking for that finish line and they're looking for that life-changing financial outcome. And that's actually a dangerous person to invest in as a venture investor. You want to see somebody who comes in with fire in their eyes for a 20-year vision, who is going to look at a pile of $50 million that they could take home personally and be like, fuck that, I'm not taking that money. Like, the mission is more important. I'm coming for that whole industry. I'm going to see this thing through and achieve the outcome that I want to see. I want to take this technology to its full potential, or I want to finish the disruption that I started, or something like that. They're not actually focused on the monetary outcome. Paradoxically, that's what tends to drive the greatest financial outcomes, in my opinion. There's certainly exceptions that probably prove the rule. But I think it's a good heuristic for your own life and for people you meet, and how you understand different people's motivations.
Interesting. And he also talks about value creation comes from technology, right? And Anderson talks about software will eat the world. But how about industries like fashion industry as well as real estate industry? Do you think these will be disrupted by technology, or is it going to be high margin businesses which will not be?
One of my favorite lines in the book is, there is no technology industry. Every industry has technology, just like every industry has physics. You would never say, the physics industry. It doesn't even make sense. And I talk to people who read this book and they say, I loved it, but am I supposed to just put this down and go become a tech founder? Like, that's not where my life is heading. Like, no problem. Like, whatever your job is, whatever your company is, whatever your industry is, technology exists, and there are ways to use new technologies to be better at your job, whatever it is. And I encourage you to use those. Those are small steps that move humanity forward every single day. So whether you work in fashion or accounting or farming, like, these industries that you don't necessarily think of as a technology industry, have tremendous opportunities, and they're usually where other people aren't looking. I think something that's gotten conflated is software, the word software and the word technology. So people say like the tech industry and use it to mean, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix, generally software companies. Like, software is an industry. Technology pervades all industries, and it's something to really, and it's a frontier of all those industries, right? We no longer really think of electricity as a technology, but at one point it was. We may no longer think of computers themselves, like the hardware, as a technology, but quantum computers are, right? So it's not just what works, it's what's just on the edge of working, that line between new discovery, new application, new capability for humanity. And that is a really powerful frontier, both for the advancement of the species, and it's where a lot of opportunity exists for individuals. So I do encourage people, to swim closer to that frontier and spend as much time near it as you can, even if it's just finding technologies and figuring out how to apply them to the industry or the role or the company that you're already working on.
Correct. And another interesting, chapter was about technology lower prices. And I think I started using ChatGPT and other AI tools for my podcast, and it has really helped me. But do you think AI would remove all, a lot of jobs like design jobs, or with a lot of low paying jobs?
I think it's too soon to tell specifically what jobs will be replaced by AI and what won't. I think it's very interesting. Almost the closer you are to working with AI, there's like a thin razor where it's like it'll either make you way more productive or it has a chance to replace you. And I think it behooves everyone to learn how to use the best new tools of their industry rather than try to ban it, right? We're seeing that in Hollywood, right? That all the actors like and writers had this great big strike where they were trying to like keep AI out of Hollywood. And it's like, that's not the right approach. Some, bottom 40% of writers who are doing not particularly imaginative work and just sort of cognitive day labor without soul in it might get replaced by the top 40% of writers who learn how to use these incredible new tools instead of hiring cognitive day labor. But I do think it will be a net good over the long run for humanity, for sure. Embracing new tools is almost always the right thing to do. There has been a spook about employment and displacement with every new technology since the beginning of time. What are all these people who are farming going to do now that we've invented tractors? What are all these people who are feeding horses going to do now that we've invented cars? There are always new jobs. We have an infinite dissatisfaction with wherever we are as humans. There will always be new desires. There will always be new things created. There will always be new needs. Those jobs are going to change. And I don't think history tends to look kindly on the people who try to hold back that technological progress. And people who are on the technology advancement side tend to be on the right side of history. And that is where abundance comes from. One of the most important ideas I think in this book is the sense that, we would kind of all be crabs in a bucket. Like the reason that you don't have to wake up and defend, the food that you gathered the night before is technology and the fundamental sort of the cooperation and the knowledge that we have collaborated to create has created this incredible abundance for all of us. And we have to respect what it's done for us. And we owe future generations to compound on that, to continue to advance technology, to create more abundance, more resources, grant more people the privileges that we had and the rights that we had, and keep expanding it. The converse is a dark, dark place. And I don't think we want to go down it. But you don't see that played out. You just kind of hear tribal yells and fear for short-term unemployment. But I hope that is one of my biggest hopes for this book, is that it brings more people into that worldview, that technology is good, that we owe it a huge debt of gratitude, that it's a moral imperative to support it and respect it and vote for it and try new tools and invest in it. And please, self-driving cars are an amazing example right now. Right? Like truck drivers are worried, cab drivers are worried, Uber drivers are worried about the short-term unemployment. 10 years ago, when this was just a concept, everyone was like, oh my God, thank God self-driving cars are coming. They're going to save so many lives. Hundreds of thousands of people every year die horrifically in car accidents. It's a tragedy. We can't let this go on. And now we have self-driving cars. They are safer than human drivers. And all you see is headlines complaining about it and unions protesting it, and, people running smear campaigns and smashing the windows and graffitiing these cars in San Francisco. It's insanity. It's fucking crazy to me. And from the perspective of those people in their fear or their short-sightedness are perpetuating the system where hundreds of thousands of people die tragically in car accidents, rather than embracing technology that could save them and advancing it. That's heartbreaking. And again, history is not going to look kindly on those people. But it's really difficult to suss that out in real time and soothe people's fears and show them that this is a better way forward.
Right. Interesting. And A couple of months back, Balaji made a big bet. He made a bet in March that Bitcoin would reach $1 million in value within 90 days. Um,
Yeah.
but I wonder why he did that, because a lot of people thought he did because of intention. But he's a big proponent of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But how does he look like cryptocurrency? Do you think it's going to? Does he believe that it's going to interchange money, or what are his thoughts on?
Yeah, there's a little bit about crypto in this book, especially in the context of both sort of global governments and their various attempts to, the power that they derive from having a currency, specifically the reserve currency of the planet. There is also a sense of it giving individuals the freedom to opt out of that kind of system. So that bet was, I don't know if it's fair to call it a publicity stunt, but it was certainly attention grabbing and got headlines for a while. And it's really like a big thing that Balaji is talking about now in this moment is about the dangerous levels of inflation in the currency and the risks inherent in some of the banking systems and what the opportunities, what the options are. And to him, Bitcoin, it represents the opportunity for people to protect the assets that they have in currencies that might be losing some of their character. It's well outside my pay grade. I'm not a macroeconomist. I don't know, a lot of that is voodoo to me. So I don't carry a strong opinion on it. He's done a bunch of great material on it for people that are interested and want to go deeper. But he's been early in crypto for a long time. He was an early investor in a lot of these coins. It was at a conference recently with Vitalik and has supported Ethereum. And there's a great book, Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital by Carlota Perez, that traces the pattern of the adoption of a new technology. And it takes decades. We're still in the midst of it for mobile phones. Many of us saw it, most of it for the internet, but we tend to forget when we see a new currency or a new technology like blockchain and cryptocurrency, that it's going to go through this multi-decade long cycle of, boom, bust, disappointment, quiet building, new deployments, crossing the chasm into mainstream. All of these things are like rhyme certainly with other examples in history. So I think I'm still, bullish on blockchain and cryptocurrency as a new technological advancement. Certainly not going to happen this year or next year in some immediately transformative mainstream way, but I do think we will continue to see it. And there are what I hope are accessible, plain English sort of descriptions in the book that give you a sense of the context that would drive it and what the outcomes would be of a society that adopts more cryptocurrencies.
Right. Got it. And in the book, it also talks about technology determines political order. Does he mean about platforms like Twitter and social media channels which are determining about political order? I was somehow wondering what was the context behind that.
Oh, there's a really that's perhaps best understood through the lens of history, right? So how political order changed when we went from hunter-gatherers to once we invented steel, or once we invented bows, or once we invented deep sea navigation. Like different technologies changed the I forget Naval called it, maybe the logic of violence, something like that. Like how power is derived in a society in any given time is largely dependent on the technology. And so, the politics of the time are downstream of the available technologies of the time, and the culture is downstream of the politics usually. And so when we see the like knights on horseback that are the byproduct of, husbandry of horses and the ability to create steel armor, but it's rare enough that only some people have armor. But anybody who has a knight and or has an armored knight on horseback can basically take on an entire village. You saw the logic of violence turn towards feudalism. And then when you saw the invention of gunpowder and, any man, woman, or child could kill a knight on horseback just with a gun, that changed the symmetry again. So I think there's something to seeing the dominant technologies of the time and understanding how they impact the kind of world that we live in, and maybe most importantly, seeing that that's constantly in flux. We don't tend to think of the political order as changing drastically in our lifetimes, but with the pace of acceleration and the pace of change in technology, it's possible that it does, and new technologies could change sort of the inherent political order or the culture pretty drastically, and we may live through a few technological changes that would impact that. So I think this is worth understanding, even at a very high level, and just knowing what assumptions you live under that might change at any given point in your life.
Right, and interesting. And another thing which the book talked about was youth extension. I'm quite a fan of Brian Johnson from Braintree. I think he's doing a very interesting experiment. But do you think human beings can live up to 100, 120, 150 years, which, Balaji talked about, that this is something which we should try to solve?
Yeah, I don't know, but I would love to find out, right? I think there's a lot of interesting questions in there. And as Balaji points out, like, humans do not age like cars age. We don't just fall apart on some like random schedule, and some of us live to 1,000. We are genetically programmed to die, just like we're genetically programmed to go through puberty. And it is possible to change that if we understand it. And nobody really knows what's through that door. Brian Johnson is running a fascinating experiment. Nobody really knows what the results are going to be. Maybe he'll live to 125, and I believe that would make him, the longest living human ever. Maybe he'll live to 180. Like, I have no idea. Maybe like there's just so many fascinating unknowns, and we are in a very interesting place. I think, those of us who are like under 60, let's say, which most living people, our experience with technological change has largely been computers, phones, and digital. Like, software has taken huge leaps and bounds. The internet has been incredible, but it's not like the generation that came before us, where we went from not flying to flying, to spaceships, to landing on the moon. We went through electrification, went through the internal combustion engine and the creation of cars, like the true, literal, physical miracles that were considered impossible for millennia. Like 5, 6, 10 of them, like, were created all in one lifetime, which is mind-blowing. And I think, the last few decades, it's just less mind-blowing to go from iPhone 1 to iPhone 15. It's incredible. It is a miracle if you sit and think and respect, the advancements that are happening. But it's a little less shocking than watching a plane fly for the first time or going to the moon. And I think, the nuclear is another great example. It's just a little more abstract. It's happening in that plant, far away from there. And it takes a little bit of background to know that, oh my God, this tiny thing that's like the size of a gummy bear is generating enough electricity to power this whole town for this whole year. That's mind-blowing. But there's no reason we can't have, a lot more nuclear power plants. We can't have energy that's too cheap to meter. We can have flying cities and flying cars and build new islands. And like, we can have this really incredible space of abundance. And I hope that we start to live through more of those miracles. And we're seeing more of them, I think, now with robotics and drones, and and self-driving cars are a great example, getting closer to touching our lives and reminding us that these miracles are possible, and we need to keep investing in them and supporting them and appreciating them and respecting them and voting for them and welcoming them into our lives. And the great things are on the other side of that, but we don't know, we don't know if the human body or the human brain is capable of 150 or 200 or 300. We don't know if we can replace, if we can upload our neural patterns to a computer and put an artificial head on a real body if your brain breaks down first, or if you can put a well-preserved, brain or head onto a fully robotic body and have that go to 400. It's just fascinating to see what will break down over what period of time with, and what support we can give it. Maybe if you keep injecting something with stem cells, the brain can stay young forever because it's, it has that self-healing pattern. the fact that we don't know is the most fascinating thing. And I can't wait to just keep peeking through doors and seeing what's happening. And I wish there were 1,000 Brian Johnsons running different playbooks and different blueprints and different experiments. And I know, there's a lot of jokes about it, and rightfully so, but I deeply, deeply respect what he's doing and the philosophy behind it. And I salute it. And I hope, I think we've become a little less adventurous, a little less risk tolerant as a species. And I hope we see a lot more of that kind of spirit come back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I read somewhere like when something weird is happening, like some people are really going towards climate tech or towards Bitcoin. I think you should really pay attention as a VC or as an investor or as a founder. So it remains to be seen, what comes out of that experiment. Another interesting thing, which in the book talks about, is 6 types of truth. And I thought, and he specifically says that you should be pursuing truth, health, and wealth in that order. And I thought he was going to say health, wealth, relationship, but he says truth, health, and wealth. Why truth?
I like Balaji's take on truth. If you interact with him on Twitter, that truth is very fundamentally important to him. He is not afraid to be confrontational with people, and it is, in my generous interpretation, always in service of finding the truth. You don't see a lot of people arguing on Twitter from a place of citations and graphs and, supported with papers. And I think that's a testament to his goal, which is really to get to the fundamental truth and the reality of the situation, no matter how uncomfortable and no matter who it's inconvenient for. I think he wants to create a good outcome for humanity, and the shortest path to that is often pointing out uncomfortable truths. The whole the subtitle of the book is Technology, Truth, and Building the Future. So the whole middle part of the book is really about truth, and it starts with triaging the different types of truth, which I found to be a really helpful exercise. I hadn't heard anyone articulate it like this before, and I think it's a really helpful thing. So the ones he talks through, I think, are scientific, technical, political, economic, and then cryptographic, which is where this kind of new blockchain technology is coming in. And the difference between, fundamentally, first, the difference between sort of like a scientific or a technical truth and a political truth is that scientific or technical are objective. An alien might come to the same conclusion. How many atoms are there in this molecule? There is an objective answer. What's the distance between the Earth and the sun? Does the sun revolve around the Earth or vice versa, right? A political truth is something that we have just collectively on. Who's the leader? Who's the president? That's not an objective truth. That's a thing that we all believe. And so we have created that truth, where the border of a country is. There's no borders on the map. If an alien landed, they wouldn't be able to redraw the borders that we have created on our planet. So those are political truths, and understanding the difference and where those conflict necessarily, that's something not everybody appreciates, those different kinds of truth. And then economic truth is an interesting sort of subcategory, right? It's where objective truths and political truths sort of overlap. And there's an interesting story that he tells, which is about why the USSR sort of lost its arms race to the US. As a communist country, they were a lot of the numbers and a lot of the stories, a lot of the reports were not about the fundamental truth. The incentive was to put the right answer on the paper, not tell the fundamental truth about the story on the ground, and that the second and third order effects of all of those fabrications about the underlying reality sort of made the economy eventually fall apart. And capitalism, for whatever its faults are, incentivizes you to be correct about the reality and work towards improving it. And so that economic truth also includes this really interesting idea, which I think is express preference is the economist term for it, but it's the difference between what people say is important to them and how they actually act. And that you're seeing that difference all over the place, right? You see people claim virtues on social media, and then if you examine the decisions that they're making in their real life, it doesn't always hold up to the things that they say they value. And Balaji points out that that is an inexhaustible source of startup ideas, and that when you see what people really do in their behavior, that'll give you a lot of business ideas that might not be obvious if you're only analyzing the things that they say. And if you create a company that, or a product or a service that is tailored towards people, what they say they want, you could very well fail because you don't see the underlying reality of their actions, and what they say and what they do don't always match up. So I think those are, like, that section really pushes you in a lot of different directions. It challenges some of your preconceived notions, and it really sets up what I think is a really interesting sort of analysis on, the following chapters, which are about sort of how the incentives that different forms of media have to get at those different types of truth, right? And how we might adjust our thinking and our media diets to reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, he also mentioned like modern media is misaligned with the truth, and the future media is going to be decentralized. So, do you think people will just stop watching TV and newspapers and just be this decentralized?
I think it's possible over time, right? I don't have any charts to show you, but certainly anecdotally in my circles, like, people spend a lot less time watching TV and a lot more time on social media. And there's a different, media being misaligned with truth. Like, social media is misaligned in maybe a different way than cable news would be misaligned, in a different way than newspapers are misaligned. All that, and I think the first sentence in that section is, media is called media because it mediates your interpretation of reality. It's a shimmering mirror between, your eyes, your ears, your brain, and what's really happening. And I hadn't really thought about it that way, or spent too much time thinking about this. But man, the things that you ingest through your eyes and ears become the voices in your head. It becomes your beliefs. And most people are not very critically examining their media diet, or seeing it's not possible to see the nutritional facts of your media diet, or to analyze it sort of dispassionately and see what are the ideas you're loading your head with. And you can see, I think we all have like an extreme friend who you're kind of like, how did you become as opinionated as you are? How did you come to accumulate these views? Like, what are you? Who are you? And how did you get to where you are? And if you got to trace back, every thing that scrolled past their phone for the last few years and run some algorithms on it, you could probably figure it out. And I think that's an interesting thing, and especially as it's driven by algorithms, we might see increasing polarization. Like, you can see more people becoming more extreme because they're in this, we're not all watching, the same news channel anymore. We all have this highly personalized algorithm of information that's being in this personal cone of silence that's being fed to us. And you might find that you've been like slowly become radicalized without even realizing it. You're sitting next to a person who's kind of like staying in some middle normal part and critically examining their thing, and you find out, you guys have spent a year sitting next to each other, and one of you's radicalized in one direction and one of you's just stayed the same, and you're finding yourself confounded. So I think it behooves everybody to understand that, whatever media you're consuming, whether it's news or newspaper or social media or podcasts, there's always an incentive. There's always a misalignment with a fundamental truth, and you always have to apply sort of some windage to, some fuzz factor to whatever you're taking in, and try to understand what the person who created that media's incentives are. Is it for page views? Is it for clicks? Is it for engagement? And that's part of the reason, I talked about this book as hopefully being a beacon of hope and creating some optimism. I think there's it's a tragedy that we respond so well to negative news. People click on those negative headlines. We're genetically programmed to like suss out threats and look for that rustle in the bushes that might be a lion, and click on that negative headline that, might foretell doom. And when you do that multiple times every day, you get the sense that the world is heading this terrible direction, and you become a pessimistic person. And that's, again, maybe not the fundamental truth of the reality. Like, the scientific truth is that we are learning more every single day. Like, things are getting better. Violent crime is going down. Like, the poverty levels tend to continue to decrease. The wealth gap might increase, but the condition of the poorest people tends to continue to get better, and there tend to be fewer of them, especially as a percentage of population. There's a lot of reasons to believe that tomorrow is better than today, and that a few years from now is going to be even better. And I think optimism is self-reinforcing, and so is pessimism. And all of these, I shouldn't say all, many media companies, whether they're individuals or giant companies, are, just by following the incentive loop, perpetuating this pessimism, and in order to maximize their page views and their profits, really contributing to the creation of this incredibly negative worldview, and negative view of the future that I don't think it's accurate, and even more importantly, I don't think it's helpful. I think it's counterproductive to creating a beneficial future. It's creating something. We're creating a dystopia by talking about creating a dystopia, and it's that's the scary part. Like, if we talked about how good things were getting, I think they would get better, and if more people understood the beautiful things that are on the other side of some of these doors, and we're willing to open a few more of them, and we're told how exciting it is to open doors and shown the beautiful rewards on the other side of them, we'd have more people running experiments like Brian Johnson are. We'd have more people pursuing, technical degrees. We'd have more people researching. We'd have more people clamoring to be building new nuclear power plants, or new robotics capabilities, or new AI companions. Like, everything you can imagine needs to be built. Like, watch some sci-fi, get an idea, go on YouTube and start building. That's how so many great things started. But it takes people believing that it's possible, and that it's a good and noble and morally important thing to do. And I hope that's what people take away from this. Even if you don't do anything about it, just know that it's possible, and salute and respect and appreciate and support those who do go try to build something new.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another interesting thing which Balaji talked about is, the two ways to do innovation, which is Paladin way, which is not to go bankrupt, and Dark Knight mode, which is not to go banned. So if you're not as rich as Elon Musk, do you think one should go Dark Knight mode, which is not to get banned? Or,
I think both can work. I think if you're trying to pick your company, it's more important to understand the capital intensity of what you're taking on. Like, I think, we tend to think of Elon now as just being like the Tesla SpaceX guy. And people forget that he, his first company when he was 17 or 18 was a software company that he sold, and made tens of millions of dollars. And then he started another software company and sold that one for hundreds of millions of dollars, and rolled that money and that credibility into Tesla and SpaceX. So I think, if you're just starting out, software is a wonderful place to experiment, because it's very low capital intensive business, and it's quick to iterate, and you can build things quickly. You can get cash in the door. You don't have to hire a ton of people. You don't need a bunch of atoms and office space and all this crazy stuff. So I think that's maybe more important to understand when you're selecting. But certainly once you've chosen your thing, like, understand what the biggest threat to your business is. And if it's regulation, you can certainly go the route of trying to get approved and navigate that. That's capital intensive, just because it tends to be slow. Or you can go the Uber Airbnb approach, which is like, we're going to build the thing as quick as we possibly can, and we're going to make it legal by reaching scale incredibly quickly. And I think it's, there's a chapter in there where Balaji talks about the tension between sort of outdated regulations that can't anticipate what technology makes newly possible. If you had the idea for Uber and then sat down and read the law and been like, oh, that's illegal, I'm never going to start Uber, and we wouldn't have Uber, and that would be tragic, because Uber is an enormously beneficial thing for humanity, and it accomplishes the goals that the regulators set out to do much better than the taxi medallion system, which had become this like old corrupt thing. And the same thing with hotel inspectors. Like, what's better? Every host and every guest creating a review before, like, the minute they leave the property, because Airbnb incentivizes them to, or hotel inspectors that are easily bribed and come by once a year, right? Like, but it takes a visionary to see through the law and see what's possible with technology, and be willing to sort of play chicken with that gray area with the laws. Like, this is better. This is a better way to do this. And once I prove that people love it and want it, I'm willing to run that gauntlet of making laws around it and forcing it to become legal. Because now we can't imagine, like, if somebody tried to ban Uber now, we'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We all use that. We love that. Please bring that back. We rely on that. And same with Airbnb and the number of people whose livelihoods rely on it now. So learning to see and just not take, some of those false walls as permanent roadblocks to something. If you see a technology, you see a vision, you see a way to improve something, remembering those walls are made of paper, you can run right through them.
Right. And, the thing about Balaji is he's done his bachelor's, master's, PhD from Stanford, but he says like people with great credentials are low on price to performance ratio. But do you think big name B schools will die out in the next 50 years because they have their network effects? Because you see on some of the large companies, a lot of startups being built from these B schools.
Do I think top B schools will die out in 50 years? No. I think the Lindy effect is a good thing to go by. I think they're likely to be around. I think the perception of them may change in some subcultures, and we may see that be happening in tech already. I mean, people really rely on credibility and sorting mechanisms and shorthand ways to understand the talent of the person standing in front of them. I don't think those are going out of style anytime soon. And I think the older ones are probably safer, certainly than the newer ones. And there's something to be said for that. Whether it's an accurate reflection of those people is a different question, and whether they're worth, what you need to hire them for is an even more different question. But I certainly don't think MBAs or higher ed in general. I think it's threatened in some interesting ways, and different people may choose it for different reasons going forward. But I think total institutional collapse of especially the top percent is very unlikely. The prices may change, the bundles may change, fewer people may choose to go there, but I think the top ones are actually the safest. So yeah, I think those institutions are likely to be just fine. But I may be wrong. So it's a very unpredictable world. But that would be something pretty big and pretty unexpected would have to happen for that to change, I would think.
Right, and you talk about Elon Musk. I think one of my favorite books of this year was Elon Musk by Walter Isaacman, and I thought whenever I'm having a bad day, I'll think about Elon Musk. He's running 6 company. But your next book is about Elon Musk. Why a book on Elon?
I mean, I think he's the greatest living entrepreneur. I think the story was a little cleaner a few years ago before he did quite as many crazy things. And I think the Walter Isaacson book is gives you a little more of the psychology behind how extreme he is, and how, he's almost compulsively taking that next bet. I mean, his results are so extreme. And seeing the number of coin flips that he made it through, and the number of tight squeezes, and, I mean, he's like Indiana Jones. He's risked death and dismemberment and bankruptcy at an incredible number of times and made it through all of them. And it's a huge testament to, I mean, he's incredibly talented. His work ethic is incredible. This is back to what we were talking about he puts the mission and the outcome above the financial. If his main mission was to become the richest person on earth, he would have made extremely different decisions at a number of very important junctures. And he is willing. I think he put his whole net worth on the line multiple times, his whole substantial net worth on the line multiple times. He doubled down on himself from a very young age, when the odds were against him and other people wouldn't make the bets. And I respect that level of skin in the game and dedication a lot. I respect the philosophical underpinnings of why he's doing what he's doing. I think he's incredibly mission driven. The results that he's gotten in terms of moving technologies forward, getting them deployed, are pretty undeniable and incredibly, incredibly important. I think I hope what the book does, it shows more people how he thinks and how he makes decisions, and enables them to bring some of that into their own life. I think of sort of the series of books that I've done here, like the Almanack of Naval is it's very philosophical. It's very high level. It gives you a really strong foundation for inner strength, inner peace, and understanding how to go move through the world and understand what's important, and a foundation for building your own knowledge base. Balaji is a little bit to kind of turn some of those philosophies and strategies into actions and tactics. Here's more things specifically to go read. Here's how to start a company. Here's the kind of company that might have a really big impact. Here's how to find and suss out a new technology that could create an opportunity for a really strong new company. Here's how to see the fundamental base of reality, the truth of what's happening, and interact with that core truth, not the false perception of what you think might be true, right? So that's a little more tactical. And then what I hope the Elon book, which will be the third in the series, does is really give you an extremely clear, like nitty gritty, like if Elon is the best company, the best, tech entrepreneur alive, how does he do what he does? How does he think? How does he prioritize? How does he make decisions? What are the most important things to him? What kind of information is going through his head? How does he work on a day-to-day basis? How does he hire? All of those things I think are, if I can help a young person or an ambitious person of any age go from, I don't know what's important in life and I don't know how to suss it out, to through philosophy, through strategy, through tactics, through like very specific execution of making that dent in the world and using technology to move humanity forward. Like, I think that would be an incredible legacy. These are all books I wish I'd had at 18 years old, and I might be a very different person if I'd had them. And they will all be, they'll all be freely available. I hope they reach every corner of the globe. I hope they reach millions and millions of people. I hope that they fertilize a new crop of technology entrepreneur and founder and builder that can make the next generations better off.
Yeah, they say you should not meet your heroes, but do you plan to meet Elon for the book?
I would love to. If I get the opportunity, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
What's my favorite business book?
Yeah.
Poor Charlie's Almanack.
Got it. And what's your favorite online tool?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you could go back in time when you started writing the book, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
I'm very happy with the outcome. I would have stressed much less about grammar, knowing that I was going to get professional publishing help and I did not have to, that a proofreader was coming to help me would have been really nice to know.
Got it. Eric, what's the best way people can reach out to you, know more about Scribe Media and about the new book, Anthology of Balaji?
Yeah, my personal website is ejorgensen.com. That's got links to almost everything. If you want to write a book, or you want us to help you publish a book that you have written, or you want us to write a book for you, scribemedia.com. And I'm on Twitter basically all day, at Eric Jorgensen. If you want to come say hi, slide in my DMs. And the books are available on Amazon, but you can also read free copies of them digitally on the book websites, and both of those are linked from my personal site. Awesome.
This was really fun. I really enjoyed reading the book, and I hope it will do much better than your previous book. Congrats on the launch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks, Rohit.